Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the author meeting here. And I wanted to take a minute to introduce Jennifer. Before we do that, I wanted to mention that here in Saskatchewan, in this place, we are on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Native, and that we are all treaty people. And I was really pleased that Jennifer asked me to introduce her, partly because our families have been friends for a number of generations, and I actually used to babysit her Regina. Aww. The stories you could tell. I could tell stories, yeah. However, we won't. So I'm going to read this. Thank you, Nancy, for that introduction.
Oh, this is mine. Sorry.
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
Okay, Jennifer Wallace is a kindergarten art and phys ed teacher, and Judith Sensei, an artist and an author. And she has a weakness for bindings. It's a problem many of us have, especially children's books. She wrote and published her first book, a nonfiction children's story called When He Opened His Eyes, Gordon's Story, about her firstborn in 2009. Jennifer writes articles and poems for Sister Triangle, which is an online women's magazine, and has led writing workshops and writers' events. In 2020, the non-published manuscript of Miss G and Me, a daughter's memoir, was awarded third place in the Saskatchewan Writers Guild's John V. Hicks Long Manuscript Award for Creative Nonfiction. Jennifer was born and raised in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 territory, and lives there with the loves of her life, John, Imogen, Isaac, and their 2 dogs. Jennifer Wallace.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, and thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. Spoilers. And as Nancy said, we've been dear friends for a long time. And as we gather here, I'm reminded of a phrase that I've heard from First Nations, aunties and cookums, referring to all my relations. And I really love that because all my relations speaks to our interconnectedness with each other, with the animals, with the plants, and with the land where we live. So I hope my reading today that you feel that interconnectedness. And I often think of how I want to live and walk in treaty, in the spirit of treaty, and a path towards reconciliation. And so I often wonder how I can do this. And so one way is to support local Indigenous artists and authors, and it's a great time of year to do this. So, and as an author, I'm really grateful for the benefits I've received from treaty and from living here. So thank you all for being here. Okay, so let's begin. And I want to make sure we're good to go. Okay. On calling, questions, pet names, and identity. Ruth! Ruth! Grandma yells for Ruth, my mum, from another end of the house. The house is in Baillieston, in the parish of Clarendon, Jamaica, and we are here for my grandfather's funeral. My grandmother is a force in her home. It is her domain. Often she speaks her mind, and at other times she leaves us guessing. There is no question she wants a response now when she calls. Calling out is common here. Messages carry across wooden slat floors and cool red tiled verandas, through open windows, off tin roofs, beyond cinder block fencing and to the hills. It is woven in the dialect. Come ya, soon come. You na hear me a call? She calls after my cousins this way too. When? Brandon? I hate it when she does that. Mom rolls her eyes and sucks her teeth like a disgruntled teenager. I'm a grown adult standing in a bedroom with my mother in my grandma's house. I have never seen my mother act this way. My mother is whispering conspiratorially to me about her mother, as though I am one of her chums. She never had a chance to do this, complain to anyone about her mom. It wasn't done. I can't stifle a giggle hearing her voice in my head calling, Jan, Andrew, Jennifer, Angela. Mom, you do the same thing with us, I reply. I do? She asks. It drives us crazy, I assure her. Me soon come, Mummy, she calls back. Mothers, in my experience, always seem to be calling for their children to come. So that's the first little bit. When people see the title Miss G and Me, they wonder, what is this all about? Who is this Miss G? If you know my mom, her name is Ruth. Growing up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in the 1980s, I was a kid always wanting to know more. The family historian before I knew what history meant. I wanted answers to my questions after having to answer questions people asked about my existence, like, where are you from? Naturally, I thought my mother would hold the answers to what I was looking for. She was the one who was different from other moms I had noticed. She was from Jamaica. How old are you, Mom? How did Dad ask you to marry him, Mom? Why did you come to Canada, Mom? There were some things I already knew. I knew my mom's name and her maiden name. Then the phone rang and my sister picked it up. "Me calling for Miss G?" said a voice with a different lilt. About to say, "I think you have the wrong number," my sister realized she had heard this swaying talk before. "Sorry, who is it you want?" "Miss G." Ruth McLeod or Ruth Williamson?" "Miss G?" Insistence and waiting. "Dad, do you know who Miss G is?" "I think it's your mom," Dad answered. "Mom, phone for you, long distance," my sister yelled, then turned and whispered to me, "Miss G." We saw and heard Mom's transformation happen. A relaxing of shoulders, a change in tone, a familiarity. Mom did know the person on the other line. She started talking and became Miss G. Miss G, the name of a stranger who had a life separate from her children, her life here. Apparently, this Miss G still existed. Who is Miss G, Mom? I am still finding out. Isn't that the truth when we think about our parents? There's so much we don't know, and so much we have to learn. This is a poem. She left hot humidity for dry cold, dry hot. Sycamore, bamboo, banana for pine and poplar, mostly prairie. Outside she gardens, inside the store-bought tropics, guava, papaya, lychee, mangoes, rice and black-eyed peas, ginger beer, hot rum toddies for sickness. Give her children a taste of Bailliston, Clarendon, Jamaica. Do they know what it means? Do they feel color? Or do they feel it only when someone asks, "Where do you come from?" Do they know it gets straightened out of their hair? It's called a relaxer. Relax hair, calm down, fit in. But the landscape remains on their noses, on their lips. Water hits their hair and tightly curled roots suck moisture. When summer comes, their skin calls to the sun. Restore Jamaica's color to these Canadian kids. And another poem. This is about my mom when she was a little girl. I, Miss G, don't like to sit indoors, sit around not doing things. I was a skipping, hopscotching girl, gardening and sewing, purposeful movement, no sloth, no slack, thought I would be staying with the two aunties in Kingston, would be adventure, holiday, capital of Jamaica, big city, big happenings. It was hot, suffocating, lack a breeze, lackluster. Left at their neat and tidy house alone while two aunties went to work. I did not last the week, came home early to sweet crepe, myrtle, gardenia, and hibiscus rural air. Home where I could breathe, move, catch a breeze, and be me. So I try to imagine what Mom must have been like, and she tells me a little bit. I'm going to move on to a little bit about England. So when Mom was 17, her mother told her that she is going to go to England to be a nurse. And she said, okay. She didn't have much choice in the matter. And England was recruiting at the time. England was battered and bruised, nearly crushed by an ugly war. buildings in ruins, desperate for laborers who were few. English men had not fought and suffered to work in foundries, factories, on railroads, and low-paying jobs. English women had not fought and suffered to work in hospitals, reminders of disease and injury. This era imported a new and colorful people to England. Windrush generation, they were called. Call and answer. Come to Mother England. Escape poverty. Come to the modern world. Taste opportunity. Come to better yourself. Provide a future for your family. Send money home. They came on boats, thousands. Some came on the Empire Windrush to fill a need and answer a call, a mission, provided with promises, cheap passage, accommodations, training, sustenance, and rights of citizens. The call of the Commonwealth. Long live the reach of the crown. If it wasn't for this call, Miss G would have never left. So it's a mixed bag when you think about it. But I'm grateful that my grandmother set her on that path. Read a little more about, just try to skip around here. This book does do a lot of skipping around. I'd like to get on to some about my hair. I've lost some of my pages here, sorry. That's all right. I'll go on to this one. This is an early morning island. We're in Jamaica now. 1998. Noises and busyness wake us up at 6 a.m. The place is alive. Stepping off the plane, I am greeted by the heat and a sweet woodsy smell that is Jamaica. It has been 9 years too long. I don't miss Saskatchewan, but I miss the water pressure when I turn on the tap. Despite a drought here, the tropical greenery is still amazing. The beauty of the people also strikes me. Different shades of me and my family are everywhere. I've learned so much about me and my family on this trip. Only it took my grandpa's death to learn all this. Today was the funeral. It was beautiful and long. I learned about his quietness and hard work. I learned about his sense of humor. I learned about traditions that my uncles and aunts and mom hold dear. I learned that my grandma is a strong-willed woman. I learned that my cousin Gail can soar with her voice. She moved the congregation to tears with her tears, and her voice singing, "It is well with my soul." Her brother carried her through by joining her at the front of the church and singing with her. I learned that my face can be seen in my mom's double cousin Audette, in my mother and in my Aunt Joan and in my grandmother. I learned that my aunt wanted dearly to help my grandpa get on a plane so we could get to know him. I learned that dancing could occur at a funeral. Through the tears we sang, "No grave can hold me down, no grave can hold me down, no grave can hold me in the ground, no grave can hold me down." While we sang, there was dancing on graves and clapping in the cemetery. What a sight! I also learned that when you see someone for the first time in years, you realize how much you miss that person. I miss my family, I miss this place, and I missed knowing my grandpa, Mass George, the man from whom my mom got the name Miss G. I should probably flip back to that one about Miss, how she got her name. I'll flip to that and then I'll do one more and then we can have some questions and answers. The second time I visit Jamaica, I'm 13, and I learned that everybody has a nickname. That is more a pet name or a home name often given by family. My cousin Lloyd goes by Webster. Somewhere there's a Delroy who goes by Anthony. Evidently the pet name does not have to be a shorter derivation of someone's actual name. Each name has a story. My mom, Miss G, is the eldest of 4 children. She was given the name Miss G after my grandpa, who was Mas George, the Mas being short for master. My grandma's pet name, Miss Nez, is short for her actual name, Inez. My uncle, the youngest of 4, is Little George, even though his real name is Hensley. In and around this island, there are many Miss G's and Little Georges and a few Miss Nezes too. It all seems so curious to me, and even more curious when we go to visit one of Mom's friends who answers to Bubba. Mom was 68 years old when she found out about the origin of her pet name, Miss G, at her Aunt Velma's funeral. In 1942, 2 Williamson boys, George and Daniel, married 2 sisters, McPhee girls, Inez and Velma. The families were undoubtedly close. In the following year, both couples were expecting their first babies. They would be double cousins. The sisters were delighted to be pregnant. The men made their bets, and they too were excited. They were walking proud, certain their first boys were on the way. Me sure me gwan have a son. Me gwan name him after myself, George Jr. Me too. Me gwan name man Dan Jr. The men made their bets and proclamations, and then they waited. Perhaps there were smirks and stifled laughs amongst the men as they slapped the new dads' backs in congratulations when word that baby Ruth and baby Elaine were born, both girls. George and Dan had to swallow their pride and their proclamations. Were the pet names given to the girls cheeky reminders to the men who didn't get their juniors? Or perhaps these names were there to remind these dads that they would always be proud of their girls. Miss G and Miss Dan made their debuts. Girls with their dads' names, following them wherever they went. These strong girls. And I'll end on going back to visit. I wrote this in 2020 when there was no chance of visiting. If I could step off the plane in my mother's Jamaica, into the island heat smells, put it on paper, scratch and sniff over and over the warm, humid, woodsy smell that remains in my clothes and my luggage when I return home there in the wooden bowl from Auntie. Scraping the bowl, I would pop it in my mouth, the curry kick on my tongue, ginger heat in my throat, salty sweat beads on my upper lip, more rum than raisin liquid ice cream, sweet white flesh of sour sop. Leaning and listening in, I could hit rewind and play again, insistent honking horns, musical lift and relaxed laughter and conversations, playful banter ever calling, songs on the radio that blend their calypso and reggae beats, steel drums backing them, the sucking of teeth. Watching and waiting to witness curiously downed leafy branches left in the road that warn of impending danger around the next corner from the front passenger seat on the left, blurred, colorful vendors and markets passing by the roadside, white sand beaches, blue-green jeweled sea and red bauxite soil. Reaching and touching, gentle warm rains curl my hair, taut embroidered flowers woven in baskets, sun heating the skin on my forearms, holds my late grandmother's sure hands, fingers that just finished combing and braiding her long white hair. I want to go back if I could, but for now, I am here. You hear me now? Soon come, Grandma, soon come. Thank you. So this is a time for Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be most happy to answer them. I'm so grateful that you're all here. Are there any questions? I'll give you some time. Yes, Isabel.
You use that Jamaican accent very easily, very, it just seems to come naturally to you. So when you were growing up, did you have any remnants of that accent? Your mom would definitely have had that accent, your dad probably would not, right? But would that have kind of, would you have noticed it in yourself sometimes when you got excited or emotional? There's that accent.
It was never mine, and I'm hesitant. Thank you for the question. Actually, I'll repeat it for anyone who didn't hear. So Isabel was asking, that I feel quite at ease using the Jamaican accent. And is it a remnant of my childhood? I would have heard my mom, but was it ever something that was natural to me, or that was something that I expressed when excited? I hope I repeated that correctly. So I've been, as I said earlier, born and raised here. So Jamaica has always been other as a part of my mom's experience and us visiting. So while there's hesitancy for me to use it, it feels very natural. We had a family member who's mentioned in the book, Aunt Carmen, who's been very much a part of our lives, and she's lived the dual life of being in Jamaica and here. And so seeing her get together, and she actually lived with us for a time too, with my mom, it just seems so natural and so real. And whenever I hear it, it feels so lyrical and a part of me that I just naturally want to use it. But I'm careful, because oftentimes people want you to put on an accent for funny or put on an accent for show. And it's very much a part of language and of living and of culture. And so I don't do that lightly, but I want to catch the feeling and catch what it is, the life there. So when I'm using it, I keep that in mind, the people who I know and love. And so that's why it's important to me to write it that way and to be able to speak it, but to be conscious of it too. Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, sometime.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. That was a beautiful read. So in the book, you have mentioned that it took you a while, like several years, to write the book. Right? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. So the question was that in the past, I've said that it's taken me a while to write this book, and it certainly did. As a child growing up, I always wrote in journals and diaries and things, so it's always been on my heart to be a writer. And this particular book, when I was 22, I wrote something called Miss G. And I gave it to my mom as a Mother's Day gift as a little surprise. My dad was a little bit in on it, but I just kind of gave it to her. And it wasn't really well thought out, and I don't know that she appreciated it so much. But I thought I knew what I knew when I was 22. And I've learned a lot since then. In 2019, I was watching To Call the Midwife, a story of women in that era who were post-war, who were going into people's homes, delivering babies, and there was an influx of women who were brought in that time, and there was a character in the later seasons who was brought in from a region of Jamaica that my mom was actually from, and she was experiencing some of the very same things, looking for a church, not feeling like she fit in, trying to adjust to this culture. And I went, wait a second, my mom has this story. This is the time. I think I really need to write this. So in 2019, I approached Mom and I asked her permission, which I think is so important. And I wanted her to have a voice, and I asked her if she'd be okay with me interviewing her. And she's very patient with me and gracious. And I also added "and me." And I felt that was important, because it is not my mom's book, and oftentimes people want to talk to her about it. And it is very personal. I do tell a lot of personal stories, but I wanted to say the "and me" because it's also my relationship with her and my viewpoint of her experiences, which is really tricky, and you don't want to overstep and say this is all her voice. So while I wanted to give Mom a voice, I also wanted to say this is from my perspective. So yes, in 2019 I started that process, and then there was a writer's workshop offered by the Writers Guild, and it was about memoir writing, and I went, wow, how perfect is that? So I took the writing course, which was wonderful. I love the Writers Guild. And then there was an award that summer, and it was for nonfiction and long creative, and I went, hello, that was another opportunity. And then a mentor, Mary Bishop, who's sitting amongst us today, she also was she was at our school at the time when I was writing, and I said, would you mind looking at this? And she was so generous with her time and said, yes, I would love to, and did that for me and gave me some excellent pointers and set me on the path towards my publisher, who she is with, Driver Works Inc.'s Dina Driver. And so that process from 2019 to 2022 is when publication happened. So it's a long process, it is. And it was many years of writing from childhood, keeping things to now, but well worth it. And I have a lot of research notes in the back. If you've read it, there's appendices and there's all kinds of fun things. But I think to do a story well, you want to do the work. So yeah, and I'm very grateful to the people who helped me do the work. There's another amazing author, Lorna Goodison, who is also very generous and just treated me like one of her students that I reached out to and gave me some invaluable advice about making sure I got the voice right for Jamaica. So yeah, thank you for that question sometime. I'm a teacher, I can wait.
Do you have any copies available here today, or can you order them online?
I cannot sell today. There is a draw, however, so we'll be drawing names. I hope you all got your name on the draw, so someone can potentially win one today, signed copy. I can sell personally later, or at McNally Robinson, Indigo, Turning the Tide, WGM, SaskMade, and Craft, the Saskatchewan Craft as well. There's lots of places you can buy the book, the University of Saskatchewan as well, but yeah, I won't be selling it today. But thank you for the question, Kendra.
Out of your trunk in the parking lot?
Now. The question was out of the trunk in my parking lot? No. Although I often do have extras with me when I'm going around, so it's true. Yes, Susan.
Can you tell us about the artwork on the cover?
Oh yes, please. Thank you for asking that. I'll get you one that's not so ratty because this is my copy. Yes. So Janet Williams, fun story about that. When Dina was asking me, do you know anyone who could, be the artist? And I don't know. And then it came to me, Janet Williams, she's also with the Saskatoon Public School Division, known her for years, and I would meet with her often at the Caribbean Pavilion, where she'd be selling her beautiful artwork, and I bought her prints, and now I bought her jewelry since. I'm not wearing it today, and I approached her, and she has a similar background. Her parents actually, they also immigrated to England before coming to Canada from the Caribbeans, and had so many things in common. And she was she was delighted to work with me, and she's an amazing artist. So she did this painting, and the three symbols that are in there, there's a poem about the three symbols, the Dr. Bird and the teacup and the lily. Those I created those. I've done drawings, and they're throughout the book. And she found a way to incorporate them into the painting, and so it was pretty amazing. And then she had me sign those on the painting, and I was like, what? It felt like I was signing her work or something. But I'm really grateful to her. At first we had thought of, she does some paintings of women in movement, and oftentimes the faces are blank. And she said, no, this needs to be your mom. And I know this is a big deal to my mom because of her face everywhere. It's very personal, and she's like rolling her eyes at me right now. But we just felt like it was the right thing, and it really is. And so I'm just so pleased, and thank you, Susan, for asking that. Yeah, Janet Williams, get her things. She's a great artist. Yeah, which brings me to my thank yous, unless there are more questions, and I will wait if there are more questions. I'll make eye contact.
Are you working on anything else?
Oh, very good question. One of my guests who came in, I won't point her out, but I am working on something with her, and she's a dear friend. And as I was working on this, she asked me, and she'd been thinking about this for years. And that's a big story, and there's going to be a lot of work, but I'm really honored, and I'm really excited. So I hope to say yes. I don't know how long the project will take, because there's a lot of background and a lot of history that I have yet to learn that she will teach me. But yes, I'm not done. Writing is so much a part of me, and so yeah, I'd love to do more. Nonfiction is where my heart is at. John's trying to push me. He's like, you can do fiction, Jen. You can do it. But we'll see. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Where do you fit in your writing time then?
Where do I fit in my writing time? Yeah, as a teacher, it's tricky, right? Because we're always looking at other people's writing or doing other little professional things, write-ups. So things you can scribble down if thought comes to head. I have little journals. Kind of everyone has their separate little journals that they collect, and so you write down whenever you have a chance or on the phone, just whatever comes to you. So writing can happen anywhere and any time. And I think that's what people forget sometimes, or they say, I'm not a writer. But if you had those thoughts that come to you and you can jot them down and then use your senses and use your experiences, there's some valuable things that people can see in themselves when you write. And it's amazing what you can, what I've learned from other people from writing and listening. And so, yeah. But finding the time is important, and you have to just do it. That's another thing. People think like, oh, when do you get the inspiration? And it's like, well, I just have to write, and then it comes while you're writing. So sometimes you're not necessarily inspired, but you got something to do, so you do it. Well, I have a list of thank yous, and then there's tea and snacks and visiting. I would love to visit with all of you. And Isaac, you have the bowl, correct? Okay, we'll do that right after the thank yous. Oh, John's making sure that everyone gets their names in. So I just want to thank SaskBooks for asking me to record this and for hosting me for Saskatchewan Book Week. I felt really blessed to be asked by them to read. Creative Sask for a book publishing grant, and DriverWorks Inc. She's my publisher, Dina Driver, is a wonderful publisher and promoter. And the Saskatchewan Writers Guild for offering awards and workshops and opportunities to give readings. Mary Bishop for being an amazing mentor. And Janet Williams, as I mentioned earlier, for her artwork. This library branch, they were great in helping me in the setup. My family who's here today for being so supportive, and my mom for letting me do this project. Nancy Taylor and Al, thank you for helping today and for the introduction. Thank you all for being friends and family who are so supportive, for being here today. It's just a blessing to just be in your midst, and I really feel like it's been a great opportunity to be together.